Jake Morrison walked through the long metal halls of Nexus Prime. The space station was huge. It was bigger than any city on Earth. The walls were made of some kind of blue metal that seemed to glow. Strange symbols covered every surface. Jake could not read them, but he knew they were warnings. Warnings about what happened to species that did not follow the rules. The human ambassador wore his best suit. It was black and simple, nothing fancy. He carried a small bag with Earth's documents. Everything humanity had learned about space and other species was in that bag. It was not much compared to what the other species knew. Jake reached the main chamber. The doors were 20 feet tall and opened without sound. Inside, the room was dark except for floating lights above each seat. 12 different species sat in a circle. Jake walked to the center. His footsteps echoed in the big space. The Zephyrians sat in the highest seats. They were tall and blue with skin that looked like crystal. Their leader was Zarthul. He had been alive for over 300 years. His eyes glowed white when he looked at Jake. Next to him sat the Krillax delegates. They looked like giant insects with 4 arms and hard shells covering their bodies. Their clicking sounds filled the air as they talked to each other. The Vorthon Collective had no bodies. They were made of pure energy that moved like colored smoke. Their voices came from speakers built into their seats. Other species filled the remaining chairs. Some looked like reptiles. Others had tentacles instead of arms. A few had multiple heads that moved independently. Jake stood in the center and waited. He knew the rules. Humans could only speak when asked a direct question. Until then, he had to listen and stay quiet. Zarthul stood up. His crystal skin caught the light and threw rainbows across the room. When he spoke, his voice was deep and carried easily through the chamber. Human Representative Jake Morrison, Zarthul began. Your species has been observed for 57 rotations since you achieved basic space travel. The Council has reviewed your progress. We have made our decision about Earth's future. Jake felt his heart beat faster but kept his face calm. This was the moment humanity had been waiting for. For 57 years, Earth had sent messages to space. They had built better ships and explored nearby star systems, all while knowing that other species were watching and judging them. The Council has decided that humanity requires a compliance test, Zarthul continued. This test will determine if your species deserves to join the galactic community, or if you pose a threat that must be contained. One of the Krillax clicked loudly. Jake recognized it as laughter, the insect being spoke in a voice that sounded like grinding metal. Look at it, the Krillax said. So small, so weak. No natural weapons, no armor, no special abilities. How did this species even survive long enough to reach space? More clicking sounds came from the other Krillax. The Vorthon Collective's energy forms pulsed with colors that Jake had learned meant amusement. Even the reptilian Sorak delegates hissed in what passed for their version of laughter. Zarthul raised one hand for silence. The test will consist of 3 challenges. Each challenge will test different aspects of your species' capabilities. Military strength, tactical thinking, survival instincts. If humanity fails any challenge, Earth will be quarantined. All technology will be removed. Your species will be returned to pre-space levels of development. Jake finally spoke. What are the specific terms of these challenges? The first challenge will be individual combat, Zarthul explained. Your species will select one representative to face our chosen champion. The battle will be to the death or until one fighter surrenders. A Sorak delegate leaned forward, its yellow eyes focused on Jake. We suggest you choose surrender quickly, human. Our champions have never lost. The second challenge will be fleet warfare, Zarthul continued. Your best military commanders will face a superior force in space combat. Victory means destroying or forcing the surrender of the enemy fleet. The Vorthon Collective's speaker crackled to life. Your primitive ships will provide excellent target practice for our crews. The third and final challenge will be planetary defense, Zarthul said. One of your colonies will be attacked by an overwhelming invasion force. You must successfully defend it for a period of 1 standard rotation. Jake listened to each challenge. He thought about the ships Earth could send. He thought about the soldiers who had volunteered for this mission. He thought about the colonies that had been built on distant worlds with minimal defenses. These challenges seem designed to favor your species over ours, Jake said carefully. Zarthul's crystal features showed what might have been surprise. Of course they are. The strong rule the weak. This is the natural order. We are testing whether humanity is strong enough to deserve a place among us, or weak enough to require containment. The Krillax delegate clicked again. Most species surrender after hearing the terms. Only fools accept challenges they cannot win. Jake looked around the chamber. Every alien face showed the same expression. They expected him to beg. They expected him to ask for easier terms or more time. They expected humanity to show weakness and fear. Instead, Jake smiled. "We accept your challenges," he said clearly. The chamber fell silent. Several species exchanged glances. A few whispered among themselves in languages Jake could not understand. Sarthol leaned forward in his seat. "You accept? Without negotiation? Without requesting modifications to the terms?" "That's correct," Jake replied. "Humanity accepts all 3 challenges as stated." The Krillax delegate's clicking became louder and more rapid. "Impossible. No species accepts death so easily. You must not understand the terms." Jake's smile grew wider. "Oh, I understand perfectly. But I think there's something you should know before we begin." "What is that, human?" Zarthul asked. Jake looked directly at the Zephyrian leader. His voice remained calm and polite, but something in his eyes changed. Something that made a few of the alien delegates shift uncomfortably in their seats. "You might want to reconsider this challenge," Jake said, "because you're about to learn why evolution made humans the way we are. And I don't think you're going to like the lesson." The aliens laughed again, but the sound was not as confident as before. A few species had stopped laughing entirely. They stared at the human in the center of the chamber. Something about his calm confidence made them nervous. "Your threats amuse us, human," Zarthul said. "We have conquered dozens of species. We have weapons that can destroy stars. We have lived for centuries while your entire civilization is younger than some of our individual members." Jake nodded respectfully. "I'm sure that's all true. But you've never fought humans before. What makes humans so special?" The Saurak delegate hissed. Jake's smile disappeared. His expression became serious. When he spoke again, his voice carried a warning that sent chills through several alien representatives. "We're the only species that evolved on a death world," Jake said quietly, "and we're very good at killing things that try to kill us." The chamber fell completely silent. For the first time since the meeting began, no alien species was laughing. The planet Arenaxis 7 was a nightmare of sand and heat. 3 suns burned in the orange sky, making the air shimmer like water. The temperature reached 130 degrees during the day. At night it dropped to 20 below zero. Sharp rocks stuck up from the desert floor like broken teeth. Nothing lived here except for small creatures that hid underground. Lisa Parker stood at the edge of the fighting circle. The area was marked by tall metal posts that created an energy barrier. Inside the circle, the sand had been raked smooth. No weapons or tools were scattered around. This would be a clean fight with only what each warrior brought. Lisa wore standard Earth military gear. Her uniform was desert camouflage designed for hot climates. She carried a rifle, a sidearm, and a combat knife. Her boots were thick and designed for rough terrain. She had a small pack with water and basic supplies. Everything about her looked ordinary compared to what stood on the other side of the circle. Kethmore was 9 feet tall and weighed over 400 pounds. His exoskeleton was black and shiny like polished stone. 4 arms extended from his torso, each ending in hands that could crush steel. His head was triangular with compound eyes that could see in multiple directions. 2 large mandibles clicked constantly as he breathed. The Krillax champion carried 4 plasma blades, 1 in each hand. The weapons hummed with energy and glowed bright blue. His natural armor had never been penetrated by any weapon. His speed was incredible for something so large. He had fought in over 200 battles and never lost once. Above the fighting circle, floating platforms held the alien observers. Representatives from all 12 council species watched from climate-controlled boxes. They had traveled across the galaxy to see this event. Most had brought recording devices to capture what they expected to be a quick execution. Sarthul's voice echoed across the desert from hidden speakers. "The first challenge begins now. Combat will continue until one fighter is dead or surrenders. There are no other rules." The energy barrier activated with a low hum. Neither fighter could leave the circle until the battle ended. Lisa checked her rifle and looked across the sand at her opponent. Kethmore raised all 4 plasma blades and clicked his mandibles in what she recognized as a war cry. The alien observers leaned forward in their seats. They expected to see the human cut down in seconds. Some had already begun discussing the next challenge. assuming this one would end quickly. Kethmore charged across the sand with incredible speed. His forelegs moved like pistons, throwing up clouds of dust. The plasma blades left trails of blue light as he swung them in deadly arcs. He planned to end this fight with a single overwhelming attack. Lisa did something unexpected. Instead of standing her ground or running away, she dropped to one knee and fired 3 quick shots from her rifle. The bullets struck Kethmore's chest and bounced off harmlessly, but they made him stumble slightly. That small delay gave Lisa time to roll sideways and avoid his charge. Kethmore spun around faster than anything his size should move. He swung 2 blades at where Lisa had been. The weapons cut through empty air. Lisa was already moving, staying low and using the uneven ground to her advantage. The alien observers muttered among themselves. They had expected the human to stand and fight like other species did. Instead, she seemed to be running away. This looked like cowardice to them. But Lisa was not running from fear. She was doing what humans had learned to do over millions of years of evolution. She was hunting. Lisa circled around behind a large rock formation. Kethmore followed, confident that he had her trapped. When he rounded the rocks, Lisa was waiting. She had climbed up on a ledge and jumped down onto his back as he passed underneath. The rifle in her hands was now useless at close range. Lisa dropped it and pulled out her combat knife. She drove the blade into a joint where Kethmore's arm connected to his body. The tip found a gap in his armor and went deep. Kethmore roared and spun, trying to reach the human on his back with his plasma blades. But Lisa was in his blind spot. She held on with one hand and worked her knife deeper with the other. Green fluid that served as Krillak's blood began to leak out. The alien observers had stopped talking. They watched in shock as the tiny human rode the massive warrior like he was a wild animal. Several delegates checked their recording devices to make sure they were capturing this impossible scene. Kethmore slammed his back against a rock wall, trying to crush Lisa. She let go just before impact and rolled away. The Krillak's warrior spun to face her, but his left arm hung useless at his side. The joint was damaged and would not support the weight of a plasma blade. Lisa backed away, breathing hard but not showing fear. She pulled out her sidearm and watched Kethmore's movement. The big warrior was favoring his left side now. His charge was not as fast or as coordinated as before. Stand and fight with honor. Kethmore clicked in accented standard Galactic. Stop running like prey. Lisa did not answer. She was studying his movement patterns and looking for other weak spots. She noticed that his right rear leg was slightly shorter than the others. An old injury, probably. She filed that information away for later use. Kethmore charged again, this time swinging his 3 remaining blades in a defensive pattern. He had learned not to overextend himself. Lisa fired her sidearm at his legs, not trying to penetrate his armor, but to make him stumble again. The bullet struck his feet and threw up puffs of sand. Kethmore maintained his balance but had to slow down. Lisa used that moment to dive under his guard and slash at his right rear leg with her knife. The blade found another gap in his armor. Now Kethmore was limping. His charges became slower and less controlled. Each time he attacked, Lisa found a way to hit him and escape without taking damage herself. She was like water flowing around a rock, always moving, always adapting. The battle continued for over an hour. Kethmore grew more frustrated and tired with each passing minute. His breathing became labored. His swings with the plasma blades became wilder and less accurate. Lisa, meanwhile, seemed to be getting faster and more precise. The alien observers had gone completely silent. They were watching something that should have been impossible. The human was winning through tactics they had never seen before. She was not trying to overpower her opponent. She was wearing him down slowly and methodically. Lisa struck again and again at joints and weak points. Each cut was small, but they added up. Green blood leaked from dozens of wounds. Kethmore's movements became sluggish and uncoordinated. Finally, the Krillak's champion stumbled and fell to one knee. His breathing was so heavy that sand around him stirred with each exhale. He tried to stand, but his damaged legs would not support his weight. Lisa walked up to him carefully, her knife ready. Kethmore raised his remaining functional arm with a plasma blade, but the movement was slow and shaky. "You fought well," Lisa said in standard Galactic. "Surrender now and live." Kethmore's compound eyes focused on her with difficulty. He had never been offered mercy before. In his culture, defeat meant death. But something in the human's voice told him she meant what she said. The plasma blade fell from his hand and hit the sand with a hiss. "I surrender," He clicked weakly. The energy barrier around the fighting circle disappeared. Medical teams rushed in to treat Kethmore's wounds. Lisa stepped back and let them work. She was tired and covered in sand, but she was not seriously injured. In the observation platforms above, alien delegates sat in stunned silence. They had just watched their finest warrior defeated by a creature they considered primitive and weak. The human had not won through superior strength or technology. She had won through patience, intelligence, and tactics they did not understand. Zarthul's voice echoed across the desert again, but this time it lacked the confidence it had before. The first challenge is complete. Humanity has achieved victory. Lisa looked up at the floating platforms. She could see alien faces staring down at her with expressions ranging from shock to fear. She raised one hand in a simple wave, then walked toward the transport that would take her back to the human ship. Behind her, Kethmore was being carried away on a medical stretcher. He would recover from his wounds, but he would never forget the lesson he had learned. The small, weak-looking human had fought like nothing he had ever encountered before. In the observation platforms, worried conversations began among the alien delegates. A few species quietly started discussing contingency plans. They were beginning to realize that humanity might be more dangerous than they had thought. The cosmic dominion hung in space like a deadly work of art. The Zephyrian dreadnought was 3 miles long and covered in weapons that could crack planets. Its hull was made of crystalline metal that bent light around it, making the ship shimmer like a mirage. Energy shields surrounded it in layers of blue and purple light. 50 smaller ships moved around it in perfect formation. Admiral Pete Collins stood on the bridge of the Independence and watched the enemy fleet through the main screen. The human battlecruiser was much smaller and looked crude compared to the elegant alien vessels. Its hull was gray metal covered with sensor arrays and weapon mounts. No fancy energy shields or light-bending tricks, just solid Earth engineering. 24 human ships spread out behind the Independence. Destroyers, frigates, and cruisers built in orbital shipyards around Earth and Mars. Their crews had trained for this moment for years, but training was different from facing an enemy with technology centuries ahead of their own. Commander Sarah Walsh stood next to the Admiral. She was his tactical officer and had studied every piece of alien technology humanity had ever encountered. Her job was to find weaknesses in ships that seemed impossible to defeat. "Enemy fleet is in attack formation," she reported. "They're moving slowly, probably want to demonstrate their power before finishing us quickly." Admiral Collins nodded. The alien observers were watching from their safe distance. They expected this battle to be even shorter than the individual combat. How could primitive human ships stand against the finest warships in the galaxy? "All ships, this is Admiral Collins," he spoke into his communication system. "Remember what we learned from studying their tactics. They fight like they've always fought. Predictable, honorable, we don't." The Cosmic Dominion's commander sent a message to the human fleet. The alien's voice was cold and mechanical through the translation system. "Surrender now and your deaths will be quick. Continue to resist and we will destroy you slowly." Admiral Collins opened a channel to reply. "Thanks for the offer, but we'll pass. Let's get this started." The alien fleet began their attack exactly as Sarah had predicted. The dreadnought moved forward with its escorts in a standard formation. Their energy weapons charged with visible power buildup that took several seconds. They fired in coordinated volleys designed to overwhelm enemy shields through massive damage. The first barrage lit up space with beams of destructive energy. The human ships scattered in all directions like startled fish. To the alien observers, it looked like panic. Human formations broke apart and ships fled in different directions. But this was not panic. This was strategy. Admiral Collins had studied every recorded battle the Zephyrians had ever fought. They always used the same tactics. Overwhelming firepower in coordinated attacks. Their enemies usually tried to match them, shot for shot, and were destroyed by superior technology. The Independence dove under the enemy formation, while the other human ships spread out wide. Instead of standing and fighting, they moved constantly. The Zephyrian weapons were powerful, but needed time to recharge between shots. During those few seconds, the human ships struck back. Human weapons were different from alien technology. They used physical projectiles instead of energy beams. Railguns fired metal slugs at incredible speeds. Missile launchers sent smart weapons that could change course and think for themselves. These weapons were crude compared to alien energy tech, but they worked in ways the enemy did not expect. The first human attack came from 3 directions at once. While the cosmic dominion was turning to target the Independence, destroyers hit its flanks with railgun fire. The metal slugs punched through energy shields that were designed to stop energy weapons, not solid projectiles. Alarms rang throughout the alien fleet. Their shields were failing against attacks they had never encountered before. The human weapons seemed primitive, but they were effective in ways that surprised everyone. Commander Walsh watched her tactical display as the battle developed. Their formation is breaking up. They're not used to enemies that move this much. The human ships fought like a pack of wolves hunting a large animal. They struck quickly and moved away before the enemy could respond. No single human ship tried to match the firepower of the dreadnought. Instead, they worked together to attack from multiple angles. The Zephyrian escort ships tried to reform their protective formation, but the human vessels were everywhere at once. They appeared, fired, and vanished before return fire could reach them. Their movements seemed random, but were actually carefully coordinated. Admiral Collins had learned from studying Earth's history. Human warfare had always been about adaptation and surprise. When facing superior enemies, you did not fight them on their terms. You changed the rules of the game. All ships execute Plan Gamma, the Admiral ordered. The Independence suddenly changed course and flew directly at the cosmic dominion. To the aliens, it looked like a suicide run. The massive dreadnought turned its main weapons toward the approaching human ship and charged them to full power. But this was a trap. While the cosmic dominion focused on the Independence, the other human ships closed in from behind. They had been moving into position during the entire battle, using the chaos to hide their real intentions. The Independence took massive damage as it approached the dreadnought. Its armor melted under energy beams that could destroy asteroids. Hull breaches opened throughout the ship, but it kept coming. At the last possible moment, the Independence fired everything it had directly into the cosmic dominion's main hull. Railgun slugs, missiles, and even the ship's nuclear reactor in an overload that turned it into a massive bomb. The explosion lit up space brighter than a sun. When the light faded, the cosmic dominion was breaking apart. Its crystal hull cracked like glass and atmosphere rushed out into space. The pride of the Zephyrian fleet was dying. The human ships behind the dreadnought opened fire on the confused escort vessels. Without their flagship's protection and coordination, the alien ships fought as individuals instead of a fleet. They were picked off one by human vessels that worked together like parts of a single organism. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it ended, the cosmic dominion was drifting wreckage. Most of its escort ships were destroyed or surrendering. The human fleet had lost half its ships, including the Independence, but they had won. In the observation area, alien delegates watched the aftermath in shocked silence. The Zephyrians had the most advanced warships in the galaxy. Their tactical doctrines had been refined over centuries of conquest. How had a handful of primitive human ships defeated them? Commander Walsh had survived the Independence's destruction and was picked up by a rescue ship. She now commanded the remaining human fleet from the cruiser Defiance. Her first message was to the alien observers. The second challenge is complete. The alien fleet has been defeated or has surrendered. Zarthel's response took several minutes to come. When it did, his voice had lost all its earlier confidence. How is this possible? Your ships are inferior in every way. Your weapons are primitive. Your tactics are barbaric. Commander Walsh smiled, though the aliens could not see her expression. That's exactly why we won. You fight like you always have. We adapt. The alien delegates began arguing among themselves. Some demanded that the challenges be stopped immediately. Others insisted that humanity must have cheated somehow. A few species quietly started sending diplomatic messages to Earth. Admiral Collins had died when the Independence exploded, but his sacrifice had proven something important. Human tactics and determination could overcome superior technology. The species that had conquered the galaxy were not as invincible as they believed. On distant Earth, news of the victory spread quickly. Humans celebrated in the streets, but their leaders were already preparing for the third challenge. They knew it would be the hardest test yet. The aliens were no longer laughing at humanity. Fear had replaced amusement in their voices. They were beginning to realize that they had made a terrible mistake. They had challenged a species that evolved by surviving impossible odds. And now those same survival instincts were being turned against them. The third challenge would determine the fate of both humanity and the Galactic Council. But after watching human tactics in space combat, many aliens were no longer confident about the outcome. Some were even beginning to wonder if humanity might be the most dangerous species in the galaxy. And if that was true, what did it mean for everyone else? New Geneva was not much to look at from space. The human colony was small and new, with only basic infrastructure spread across one continent. Farms covered the green valleys while small cities dotted the coastlines. 2 million colonists had built homes here over the past 20 years. It was peaceful and quiet, far from the war zones of the galaxy. That peace was about to end. Colonel Amy Rodriguez stood in the command center and watched the tactical display. 300 alien warships were moving toward the planet. The combined fleets of the Krillax, Vorthan Collective, and Sorak Republic had come to end humanity's challenge once and for all. This was overwhelming force designed to crush any resistance quickly. Captain Ben Tyler worked at the communications station, coordinating with defense units across the planet. His job was to make sure every human settlement could talk to the others when the attack began. The colonists had been preparing for weeks, but preparation could only do so much against such odds. "Enemy fleet will reach orbit in 6 hours, reported Lieutenant Kate Murphy from her sensor station. They're not hiding their approach. They want us to see them coming." The alien fleet was led by War Commander Veltar of the Vorthan Collective. His energy-based form controlled the flagship from a specialized command chamber. He had conquered 17 planets and never lost a single battle. The plan was simple: orbital bombardment followed by ground invasion with 50,000 elite troops. Colonel Rodriguez had only 2,000 people who could fight. Most were colonists with basic military training. They had farming equipment that could be turned into weapons and construction machines that could build fortifications. Against a professional invasion force, it should not have been enough. But the aliens still did not understand what they were fighting. The first bombardment began at dawn. Energy beams struck the planet's surface like lightning from an angry sky. Military targets disappeared in balls of fire. Spaceports melted into slag. Communication towers fell like broken trees. But the humans were not where the aliens expected them to be. Colonel Rodriguez had evacuated all the obvious targets days ago. The spaceports were empty. The military bases contained nothing but decoy equipment made to look important on sensors. When the bombardment ended, the real defenses were still intact. The invasion force landed in 6 different locations across the continent. 50,000 alien soldiers in full battle armor, supported by heavy weapons and armored vehicles. Each landing zone should have been able to conquer a human city by itself. Instead, they found empty fields and abandoned buildings. Captain Tyler coordinated the human response from a hidden command center deep underground. The colonists had spent weeks preparing the battlefield. Every road was mined. Every building was booby-trapped. Every hill and valley had hidden fighting positions. The first alien unit to advance was a Krillax heavy infantry company. 200 soldiers in powered armor marched down what looked like a main highway toward the nearest human settlement. They expected to crush any resistance and move on to the next target. The road exploded beneath them. Humans had planted charges every 50 meters along every major route. When the aliens stepped on pressure plates disguised as normal pavement, bombs made from mining explosives turned their formation into chaos. Half the company was killed or wounded in the first minute. The survivors tried to advance off the road, but the humans had prepared for that too. Hidden gunners opened fire from concealed positions. Farmers who had never been soldiers before picked off alien troops with hunting rifles and improvised weapons. The Krillax called for air support, but their aircraft found the skies dangerous. Human colonists had turned construction cranes into surface-to-air missile launchers. Anti-aircraft guns made from mining equipment shot down alien fighters faster than they could be replaced. In the second landing zone, Sorak troops faced a different nightmare. The humans had flooded the area and turned it into a swamp. Alien vehicles became stuck in mud that seemed solid until you stepped on it. Sorak soldiers in heavy armor sank into hidden pools and had to be rescued by their comrades. Human defenders attacked from boats and floating platforms, then disappeared into the maze of waterways before return fire could reach them. The Sorak found themselves fighting an enemy they could not catch in terrain that favored ambush tactics over military formations. The Vorthan Collective's energy troops had the worst experience of all. They attacked what looked like a human industrial complex, expecting to find weapons factories and supply depots. Instead, they found a carefully prepared trap. The buildings were filled with mirrors and reflective surfaces that scattered the Vorthon's energy-based attacks back at them. Their own weapons became useless in an environment designed to defeat energy-based lifeforms. Human defenders used simple projectile weapons that the Vorthon could not deflect. War Commander Veltar watched the reports come in from his flagship and felt something he had never experienced before. Doubt. His forces were not advancing. They were being picked apart by an enemy that refused to fight conventionally. Send reinforcements to all landing zones, he ordered. Double the invasion force. But more troops only gave the humans more targets. Colonel Rodriguez moved through the tunnel systems that connected the human defensive positions. The colonists had spent months digging these passages using mining equipment. Every major strongpoint was connected underground, allowing defenders to move without being seen from orbit. "How are we doing?" she asked Captain Tyler when she reached the main command post. "Better than expected," he replied, checking reports from across the planet. "They're losing troops faster than they can replace them. Their equipment isn't designed for this kind of warfare." The humans had turned the entire planet into a fortress. Every farm was a defensive position. Every factory was a weapons depot. Every family became a military unit fighting to protect their homes. But the real secret was adaptation. Human defenders studied alien tactics and equipment, then found ways to counter them. Krillak's armor was strong against energy weapons but weak against high-velocity projectiles. Zorak's sensors could not track targets in heavy electromagnetic interference. Vorthon energy forms were vulnerable to certain frequencies of light. Within days, human weapons were being modified to exploit these weaknesses. Farmers welded metal spikes onto their tractors to punch through alien armor. Engineers built electromagnetic pulse devices from power plant equipment. Scientists created strobe lights that disrupted Vorthon coordination. The siege continued for 3 weeks. Every day brought new alien reinforcements and new human innovations. The colonists learned faster than the invaders could adapt. They turned captured alien technology against its creators and found weaknesses that military experts had missed. War Commander Veltar grew desperate. His losses were becoming unsustainable. Elite troops that had conquered planets were being defeated by farmers and factory workers. The situation was becoming an embarrassment that would cost him his position. "Begin massive orbital bombardment," he ordered. "Destroy everything on the surface," but even that failed. The humans had built their cities and farms around natural cave systems and underground shelters. When the bombardment began, the entire population simply disappeared into tunnels and bunkers that sensors could not detect. The aliens found themselves bombarding empty ground, while their real enemies waited safely underground. When the bombardment stopped, human defenders emerged from hidden positions and continued fighting as if nothing had happened. On the 21st day of the siege, new contacts appeared on long-range sensors. A human fleet was approaching the system. Admiral Collins's replacement had arrived with reinforcements and supplies. War Commander Veltar faced a choice: continue a losing siege against an enemy that seemed impossible to defeat, or retreat and admit failure to the Galactic Council. The human fleet was smaller than his forces but had already proven they could win against superior numbers. The planet below was still firmly in human hands despite 3 weeks of intensive attack. His troops were demoralized and requesting evacuation. For the first time in his long military career, War Commander Veltar gave the order to retreat. As the alien fleet withdrew from New Geneva's orbit, Colonel Rodriguez emerged from the underground command center and looked up at the sky. The planet was scarred from bombardment and the cities were damaged, but humanity had won. Captain Tyler stood beside her and watched alien ships disappearing into hyperspace. "They'll be back," he said quietly. "Maybe," Colonel Rodriguez replied, "but they'll think twice before attacking a human world again." The third challenge was over. Against impossible odds, 2,000 human defenders had held their ground against 50,000 alien invaders. They had turned an entire planet into a weapon and refused to surrender even when faced with total destruction. In the Galactic Council chambers, alien delegates watched the reports in stunned silence. The siege of New Geneva had been broadcast across the galaxy as a demonstration of council power. Instead, it had become a showcase of human determination and adaptability. Some species were already sending secret diplomatic messages to Earth. They wanted to be on humanity's side when the real war began, because everyone now understood the truth. Jake Morrison walked into the Galactic Council chamber for the last time. The atmosphere was completely different from his first visit. Where there had been arrogance and laughter before, now there was nervous silence. Alien delegates shifted uncomfortably in their seats and avoided making eye contact with the human ambassador. The chamber itself looked smaller somehow. Maybe it was because the aliens no longer seemed like giants to Jake. Or maybe it was because everyone now understood that humanity was not the weak species they had pretended to be. Zarthul sat in his crystal chair but did not rise to greet Jake. The Zephyrian leader's glowing skin seemed dimmer than before. His voice, when he finally spoke, lacked the commanding tone it had carried weeks ago. Human Ambassador Morrison, Zarthul began carefully, the Council has reviewed the results of all 3 challenges. Humanity has achieved victory in each contest. Jake nodded politely. Thank you for acknowledging our success. We must ask, interrupted a Sarak delegate, how did your species accomplish these victories? Our military analysis suggests they should have been impossible. The question hung in the air like smoke. Every alien representative leaned forward slightly, waiting for Jake's answer. They needed to understand what had gone wrong. How had their superior technology and centuries of experience been defeated by a species they considered primitive? Jake looked around the chamber at faces that now regarded him with fear instead of contempt. He had tried to warn them at the beginning, but they had not listened. Now they would learn the truth whether they wanted to or not. You want to know our secret? Jake asked. It's simple. You tested us on exactly the things humans are best at. Confused murmurs rippled through the alien delegates. Several translated devices clicked and whirred as they tried to process Jake's meaning. Individual combat, fleet warfare, and planetary defense, Jake continued. These are the challenges that shaped our entire species. We have been fighting these same battles for millions of years. The Krillax delegate who had laughed at humanity's weakness now sat silent. His champion fighter was still recovering from wounds that should not have been possible for a human to inflict. You see, Jake explained, every other species in this chamber evolved on stable worlds. Predictable environments where the strong ruled the weak through superior size or technology. Your planets were safe. Your evolution was peaceful. He paused and looked directly at Zarthul. Earth was different. Earth tried to kill us every single day. Jake began walking slowly around the chamber as he spoke. His footsteps echoed in the silence as alien delegates tracked his movement. Ice ages that lasted for thousands of years. Volcanic eruptions that blocked out the sun. Asteroid impacts that destroyed entire continents. Plagues that wiped out 90% of all life. Every few thousand years something tried to make humanity extinct. The energy forms of the Vorthan collective pulsed nervously. Their species had never faced planetary disasters. Their homeworld was stable and protected by advanced technology. But we didn't go extinct, Jake continued. We adapted, we learned, we survived. And every survival made us stronger. A new delegate spoke up. Representative Quill of the Tentac Federation had remained silent throughout the previous meetings. His translator converted his chemical communication into spoken words. Are you saying that hardship made your species superior? Quill asked. Jake shook his head. Not superior, different. You tested us on individual combat and we sent Lisa Parker. She didn't win because humans are stronger than Krillax. She won because humans learned to hunt in packs and take down prey much larger than themselves. The memory of their champion's defeat still stung the Krillax delegates. They clicked unhappily among themselves. You tested our fleet tactics, Jake continued, and we defeated ships that should have been impossible to beat, not because our technology was better, but because humans learned to coordinate like no other species in the galaxy. When your people fought wars, you had professional armies. When humans fought wars, entire populations worked together for survival. Admiral Collins's sacrifice at the Battle of Cosmic Dominion had become legendary among human military forces. His tactics were already being studied and improved by fleet commanders across human space. And you tested our planetary defense, Jake said, reaching the center of the chamber. 50,000 professional soldiers against 2,000 colonists. It should have been a massacre. But you forgot something important. He stopped walking and looked up at the observation platforms where alien leaders watched with growing dread. Those colonists were defending their homes, their families, their future. Humans fight differently when survival is at stake. We don't just resist invasion, we make invasion impossible. War Commander Veltar's defeat at New Geneva had shocked the entire Vorthan collective. Energy beings were supposed to be superior to physical life forms. The siege's failure had forced a complete review of their military doctrine. Every challenge you designed played to humanity's greatest strengths, Jake concluded. You tested us on exactly the skills we developed to survive on a death world. Zarthul finally rose from his seat. His crystal features reflected the chamber's lights as he struggled to process what he had learned. If this is true, the Zephyrian leader said slowly, then humanity is far more dangerous than we realized. Dangerous? Jake repeated. That depends on what you mean. He gestured toward the empty space where other species representatives would normally sit. Several alien governments had recalled their delegates after watching the challenge results. Are we dangerous to species that threaten us? Yes. Are we dangerous to species that try to dominate others? Absolutely. But are we dangerous to species that want to live in peace? That's up to you. The truth was beginning to sink in for the alien delegates. They had not just failed to defeat humanity. They had revealed their own weaknesses to a species specifically evolved to exploit those weaknesses. What does humanity want? Asked a delegate from the Spiral Republic. Her nervous tone suggested she already suspected the answer. Jake smiled, but it was not a threatening expression. It was the smile of someone who had been waiting a long time to deliver an important message. We want to change everything, he said simply. Panic rippled through the alien delegates. Several began speaking at once in their native languages. Translation devices overloaded, trying to process multiple conversations simultaneously. You want to conquer the galaxy? Zarthul demanded. No, Jake replied calmly. We want to liberate it. The chamber fell silent again. Every alien representative stared at the human ambassador with expressions ranging from confusion to terror. This council represents a system where strong species dominate weak ones, Jake explained, where entire civilizations live in fear of those with better technology or larger armies. Where might makes right and the powerful prey on the defenseless. He looked around the chamber one more time, meeting the gaze of each delegate who was brave enough to look back. Humanity evolved specifically to destroy systems like this. We're very good at taking down bullies who think size and technology make them invincible, and we're even better at working with other species who want freedom instead of domination. The implications hit the alien delegates like a physical blow. Humanity was not just refusing to join their system, they were planning to tear it down and rebuild it. The challenges are over, Jake announced. Humanity has proven we can defend ourselves against anything you can send. But we're not interested in just being left alone. He walked toward the chamber's exit, then paused and looked back. We're going to visit every species that has been oppressed by this council. We're going to offer them something you never did, a choice. They can join us in building something better, or they can stay under your control, but they'll know there's an alternative. Zarthul's voice cracked slightly as he spoke. And if we try to stop you? Jake's smile became more dangerous. Then you'll learn why evolution made humans the way we are. And I promise you won't enjoy the lesson. The human ambassador left the chamber without waiting for a response. Behind him, alien delegates erupted into panicked discussions about defense plans and diplomatic solutions. But it was too late for either. Humanity had passed their test and learned exactly how powerful they were. More importantly, they had learned how weak their opponents were. The galaxy's self-proclaimed rulers were about to discover what happened when apex predators decided the current system needed to change. In the weeks that followed, human ships appeared in systems across the galaxy. They brought messages of hope to oppressed species and offers of alliance to those ready to fight for freedom. Some species joined humanity immediately. Others preferred to wait and see how the conflict developed. The Galactic Council tried to organize resistance, but their fleets were designed to intimidate weaker opponents, not fight an enemy that adapted faster than they could plan. Human tactics evolved with each battle, while alien strategies remained stuck in centuries-old patterns. Within a year, the Council's authority had collapsed. The hierarchical system that had dominated the galaxy for millennia crumbled as species after species chose cooperation over domination, and in the ruins of the old order, something new began to grow. A galactic community based on mutual respect and shared strength rather than fear and submission.